Greetings all, Ben here from East West. Just going to take a weekly look at uranium, so the week that was. Now I've got a fair bit to get through, so what I've done is I've tried to cut this down into chapters, so you can skip forward to any stocks that may interest you. If not, watch it all. Thanks again for everyone who's been watching the videos since I've sort of relaunched looking at uranium. If you can hit the like and subscribe, that shows me a bit of love. If I can get those numbers up, then I can keep going. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So we'll just start off here on a weekly with URA, and we found balance through the week, which is good. We sort of came down here and hit the 10 cans, and so that sort of balanced time and price. And we are still in a bullish posture, and we've got this candle, this weekly candle, that's a bit more, it's not quite a hammer, but it's hammer-like. You know, we had a good wick rejection down here through the week, so even though we've closed down on the week, we have closed towards the higher side of the range of the week, which is good. So that holds steady. That sort of, to me, is a good sign that we just came down here to touch just to get a bit of balance, and now we've just sort of stabilized. One thing that's sort of just keeping me on my toes is this RSI, and just the way this sits. If we started making new highs here and this RSI started diverging, that would be a big warning sign to me. The other things I'm watching are just some of these other indicators. So the true strength indicator is just like starting to roll over, and the Williams %R is just coming down. So I think what that means, generally speaking, is just be careful. I think if it makes a new high, that you've got a massive decision to make, because it could be heralding the top of the run. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Now, just as we move in closer here to a daily, the daily RSI is held 40, which is good. That's what I'd want to see in a bullish market. I wouldn't want to see it slip below 40. Usually in a bullish market, you want the RSI to travel between 40 and the overbought area. So this to me suggests we're still in a bullish pattern, and we've got a little bit of turning back up on a daily of the true strength indicator and the Williams %R. So, you know, remains to be seen, but this is a good sign. Now, the other thing we got through the week, which is also a good sign, is this candle right here. So certainly hammer-like, but was totally bullishly engulfed by the next day. So that's good. I mean, that would lead me to think that you know is a good pivot. It's a good short-term bottom, but obviously there's more to go here. Now, right now the market just topped out today here on the 50% line of this move down. So obviously I want to see the market get through this area, and you could almost call this maybe forming resistance. So this is a little bit of a danger zone, but obviously we want to see the market travel back up through the highs, but it's got a bit of work to do yet. So just stay a little bit wary of this, because we've got this wick that's sort of just tied into this. So we've got to make sure that what we get here is we don't get support becoming resistance, because that is not going to be a great sign. Now, we didn't quite get to the bottom of the Bollinger Bands, and that's okay. That's actually pretty good. But now we've just come back up to touch the midpoint. So now we're just at a decision time in the market to see which way it wants to move next. One thing I'm kind of liking here is that you can see here that this volume of the last 2 days, Thursday and Friday of this week, has been extremely low, but we've been able to propel back up. So that to me just suggests that there's just a lack of selling pressure coming in now. So I would think that most likely means that, you know, the hot money got cleaned out through this move down, and there's just not as much selling to be done now. So you could sort of say that maybe the bulk of the spec money's cleaned out. I mean, it remains to be seen, of course, but you know, the bulls have been able to push this back up without a lot of resistance from the bears. So that's also a good sign. So just looking at the zones, we know that we topped out here. That was obviously a good area to potentially take some profit, but now we've come back down and we've just retested sort of this sort of support area. So we've just wicked in and whipped out. So that's not a bad sign either. That just shows that the market's not really interested in trading so much down here. And as I said, it sort of feels like maybe the hot money's just cleaned out. So, you know, is that going to precede a rally? Well, time will tell, of course, but as we sit here, I'm recording this on Saturday morning, 7th of October, things look okay. So just moving over here to energy fuels, and same thing, it will be the same thing across a lot of the stocks. So I will probably be repeating the same sort of observations, but they are all holding true. So once again, we did get balance. We did find balance through the week here as we hit the Tenkan, and we've just held the edge of this cloud for now. There's a bit of downside room here, basis the cloud, but we've got a Kumo twist here, the cloud twist, so that is kind of bullish if we can just obviously stay above, but we did find balance, so that's good. Now just coming in here to the daily, the RSI did just tickle below 40, so it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think for me, I wouldn't want to see it slip any further, so I need to see price extend off a bit, and this hasn't rallied as much as some of the other stocks. It's still showing a little bit of weakness, but we've more or less held here so far. I just wouldn't want to see it slip any lower to be a bit of a warning sign to me. Same thing again here, that we've got some pretty low volume days through here, and the bulls have managed to push price back up a little bit, but I would have hoped that they could have pushed it a bit further. We've got a little gap in the market here that we probably need to fill in, and also that gap that I'm talking about, sort of just in here, it's only a very small one of course, but this gap just in here just sort of sits around this 50% retracement mark. So I'd like to see the market get back up here, but you got to stay aware. It's not. It hasn't propelled like some of the other stocks, so it's a little bit of a warning. Just finally on the volume, we've just sort of got this bit of a this downtrend in the volume. So I would like to see some volume bars get back above here, just to make me feel a little bit more confident that we've got a pivot here, but we're not there yet. So even though we came down through the midpoint of the Bollinger Bands and we're still below it, we never really tested the bottom, so that's okay. But once again, I just think we need to try to get back up to here and maybe fill this gap in to see what comes next, or try to have a guess at what comes next. So I was hoping that the market would hold this broad area of support, but it didn't. It's just dipped below, and it's just tested into some of this congestion zone, near-term congestion zone here. So okay for now, but I definitely want to see the market reclaim this. I mean, that's stating the obvious, but the idea is that we can possibly try to push towards this top. If we do, then I think I'll leave it up to you, but I think that would be a point where I'd be giving some serious consideration to getting out or trimming or doing something, or resetting the plan, but we may not make it that far. That's still a long way away. That's $10.48, so we're going to need a pretty substantial rally from here to reach that zone. But for right now, we've just held this area, but even though we slipped through this, we just need it to reclaim. So what I don't want to see is that, if we see that, then we've got a bit of a problem. So just taking a quick look at the cycles, I mean, I think this is probably almost certainly going to end up being our cycle low here on the 4th of October, which would be 90 days as I've worked it out from this low. So we know that energy fuels does tend to run longer cycles. We had a short one in here, but if we sort of balance these out, then we're pretty much in the zone. So obviously we just need to recapture this, the 10-day moving average, just to consolidate that this is the cycle low. But for right now, I think this is going to be the cycle low. So obviously what we want to see is this top broken, because if that top doesn't break and then we start getting something like that, and then this low gets taken out, then then we could almost say we're in intermediate decline. So as with all the stocks, this pivot this week, it's the same in everything, is pretty crucial. I think if we lose this pivot, we're in trouble. We have to go back and revisit some of our assumptions that we've got one more high to come in, because this gets taken out. There's a lot starting to weigh against the market from a technical perspective, to say it like that. Just moving over to Cameco now, and we found balance. Actually, we're sitting right on balance at the moment. So we have sort of wick reject this week, and we've closed a little, even though the week's closed down, we've closed off the low, so that is good, and we are in balance. So let's just see what happens, but we do have a bullish posture. So no reason at the moment to think that the trend won't continue, but once again, this pivot, and you can even see how this lines up here. I mean, this looks a very crucial spot now. If we break this, I think we're in trouble. Now, just moving into the daily, and we can sort of use the cloud here because we've got this trend. I mean, Ichimoku is good for trending markets, so obviously we do have a very solid trend that we've come down, but we never really got to the cloud, so that's kind of good. And we've got a balance point here on a daily at 38.70. So obviously I want to see the market get back above there. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but for right now, this cloud's holding firm. The trend's holding good, and we don't want to get into the cloud, and we certainly don't want to break it, because if we break it and start getting on the other side, well, that is less than ideal, to say the least. So just a little warning shot here that we did actually get below the bottom end of the Bollinger Band, so we want to reclaim this midpoint. Nothing too untoward just yet, but probably what you don't want to see is these Bollinger Bands starting to slope down. I think if we start seeing that, that is probably not perfect. Well, it's not probably, it is not perfect. So this candle we got on Wednesdays, it's the same sort of thing where I think maybe the hot money's cleaned out a bit, and the bulls, even on dropping volume, have been able to propel the market higher. So a lack of selling pressure is how I'd read that. And obviously this candle here is quite good because it fully bullishly engulfed this candle, which isn't a hammer, but the fact that we've got this wick and closed off the low is a good sign. So this coupled with this low volume, lack of sellers, that's how I read it. Now, for something a tad different here, which is another good sign, I think, for Cameco, is these are just the volume profiles of each session. So you can see here as we came down, you can see here that the point of controls, well, this one's even outside the body, and so is this one. But here we had a point of control that was much higher. Now, as we've come off this low, you can see that the volume is being done above the bodies of the candles and towards the highs of the day. So that, to me, suggests that, the bulls have got enough power at the moment to keep this thing up. I mean, it's not perfect that we closed so far away from the point of control, but that could just be a bit of end of week sort of action there. But certainly this would suggest to me that there is a little bit of bullish, obviously, but the fact that the volume's been done towards the highs means that there's definitely some buying pressure coming in here. Well, that's how I would read it. So just in terms of the zones that we're looking at, we know that we've got this peak that ties back to here that we haven't quite reached. I'm looking for the market to get there. I mean, it may not, of course, but just in the short term, we just sort of came right down here and just wicked into the wick just touched into the top of this area of congestion. So, we've got a little bit of support sort of formed here structurally, and we've pushed right back off it. So once again, this pivot remains very, very crucial to me, I think. Now, we haven't quite reached back 50%, but obviously I want to see, I don't know if it ties into this, but there's a little bit of congestion in here, but I want to see how the market reacts in this zone. Obviously, ideally, we want it to break this high, but this will be the short-term battleground, I'd suggest, between $38.68 and $39.50. This is where we want to clear into next week. So once again, the Elliott through this whole section is a little bit dicey, primarily because what we've got here to start is not good. But I'm just kind of reading it. This looks pretty impulsive, but what I'm kind of reading here is that I'm looking for probably a one wave here, a two wave, a three, and then I think what we've got here is potentially a big expanded flat for the fourth. But the reason this is great is I'm very uncertain about whether or not this is correct. So what I'm just going to do is just take this channel that's sort of formed, and I'd be looking for this to test the top of this channel, and if it does, I would starting to be that we break this high and come up here, I'd be starting to think, hey, this is really starting to look like a completed move and massive decision time at hand. That's how I'd be thinking as we sit here and now. So we've got a bit to go, but once again, I will stress once again that this pivot remains pretty crucial, because if we sort of come down here and then sort of come back up, and then if we start breaking that, then I would start to think, well, maybe this is actually completed. that's maybe done. So this pivot, I think, remains crucial. I think that if we lose this low, that, trying to untangle this to be something else is dicey. I mean, it could mean, and this is the thing with Elliott, it's always could. It could mean that you have to come back here and say, well, this isn't impulsive. This is some sort of three-wave move, a triangle, and then we're going to get another three. I mean, I guess that's possible, but I'm not really leaning into that. In fact, I'm not really leaning into this part of the count at all, other than to say that this remains crucial in my opinion. So just looking at the cycles, and it's the same thing. I think we've got a cycle low here. We're sort of in the right sort of zone to make a cycle low here on day 63 on the 4th of October. But be aware, if this does prove to be the cycle low, which I think it will, that's daily cycle 5 as I've got it, and that is telling me that the rally is probably running out. You wouldn't expect too many more daily cycles before we go into intermediate decline. So I'm looking for the market to get above here to just solidify this as the low, but obviously I want these tops taken out. But if they do, I'm really starting to think, hey, we're done here. So just looking here at UEC now, and this is the one that I've got more confidence in the structure. But we just found balance, but we're above the cloud, so that's good on a weekly basis. And the bulls have managed to actually close the week higher, which is great. But you can almost see it, and this is kind of the Elliott way I'm leaning into this is this is 1, 2, 3, and then we've got this chop for 4. Do we come up and get 5 like this? So it's the same thing. When I come in here to just look at the indicators, this is warning me that if we get a new top and we're starting to diverge, that we've got something major coming in here. So I don't know if we're going to be able to come back and grab this, which we fell short of. But certainly if we do, once again, I would start to think, hey, we've got a 5-wave pattern terminating up here. There's something major's finishing here. That's how I'd look at it as it sits. Now, just looking at the weekly MACD, I'm just seeing this and how we're just tipping into it. So, this is heralded big tops as we've got up here. So I am very cautious about the prospects of further advancement in the stock. And I think just the pattern's telling me that we do have one more kick, but certainly, if we start seeing this signal line getting up here, even though we got a little bit higher here, but if the signal line sort of gets to this is showing at 0.383. So if the signal line gets up to here and touches and we're at sort of highs, I'd be pretty wary about the chances of further advancement. That's how I would read that. So the Ichimoku is a little bit more bullish here, that we've found this pivot and we've pushed up. So we found balance on a daily, but the cloud still looks pretty sort of strong to me. It's not thinning. We're in no danger of a Komu twist, and we've closed here above the Tenkan-sen today. So even though we've got a bit of a wick high that we've just come down, that could just be a function of being Friday. But the fact that we've closed above here, we've found balance, and now the market, you can see here that the lagging span is going to potentially run into the candles, but you would hope that we're going to find a bit of support off those candles as price, which would mean that this price is sort of pushed further away, and obviously we want this top to be taken out. Now, once again, the volume's been a little bit lighter, but to me, this candle on Wednesday is a good hammer candle, I think. We've got this great wick low, and then we've just pushed, like this is a Marubozu, nice and strong. This one's not quite as strong, but like I said, it could be a function of Friday. However, that's not a bad sign. You'd love to see another volume push above the average volume, and then just for price to just at least take this high out and sort of then start to look and target back up here. So as things sit, this is good. And when we look at the retracements, even though we've sort of come to rest in the zone, we have cleared above it. So that would suggest that any sort of technical selling on the bounce might have got, by algos or anything, might have got cleaned out. but this looks probably more bullish than a lot of the other stocks to me at the moment. However, the same thing, this pivot looks very crucial to me. I mean, you could even make the argument that if we start to come, if this proved to be a peak and we started to come down, well, then what have you got in a very basic pattern sense? I'd almost suggest that you've got potentially something like a like that, something like a, maybe not quite like that, but you get the point that we start to get some sort of head and shoulder pattern. It's pretty rough, of course, it's not perfect, but the peak, the higher peak, one peak, higher peak, and a lower peak, and then down we come. So this pivot, in a lot of ways, across all the markets, the pivots that we made on the 4th of October on Wednesday are very crucial going forward, I think. So here we didn't quite get to the bottom of the bands, but we tested sort of thing, and then we've come up and we've closed above the midpoint. So, I'd still be feeling pretty good that we can come up and maybe grab the top of this again. I'm certainly thinking about, I'd certainly like to see this peak taken out this week, but that remains to be seen, of course. But this is okay. We're above the midpoint, so that's volatility wise. That's okay. So just thinking about this in an Elliott sense, and once again, because it's the same across everything, the opening movement is sort of, this is problematic. I mean, it's I think this goes together possibly like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make your first wave up, and then this, yeah. So 1, 2 that looks a bit shaky, but just taking the channel. The thing is, this looks very impulsive, so you would think that that's a 3. So to find some way to put this 1, 2 together, it could be up for debate. But the fact that we've got what would probably be a sharp 2 here, and then a big expanded flat for the 4, that sort of goes together quite well. And if we just channel this off, then I'd be looking for 5 to get to the top of that channel. So even if you just put the LED aside, I think if you could just channel from this pivot to this pivot off the high, let me just bring that in a slightly bit tighter, something like that. That channel is probably going to be pretty crucial going forward. Obviously, if we start losing the channel, then we're probably testing this anyway, and you would start to think, oh, well, maybe this is 4 and this is 5, and that was it. So I don't think that's the case, but I'm certainly not. I'm certainly aware of the potential of the market, the whole market to roll over because of the way that the general stock market looks as it sits. So I think I pointed this zone out. I mean, obviously it's a very broad zone where all these sort of tops were, but we've held it. We've come down and tested and held it, and then we just sort of held this sort of smaller section that we've got through here. I'll just clean that up so we can actually see it. So we had this little section of congestion in here, and we've come down, and you might even want to just expand that out to incorporate that low. But support, we've held support, but we need to go on with it. I mean, that's obviously, this top probably remains the ultimate target. I think, if I saw something at 1, 2, if I'm calling this 3, I'm calling this a flat 4. If I saw like a 5 wave up like that, once again, I'd be thinking, hey, we've got something pretty major going on here. So that would, but we need to take this top out. That's pretty obvious. We need to take this top out, and we need this pivot to hold. So this is the battleground. If we take this pivot out, I'm pretty nervous about the prospects of further advancement. Let's just say that. But if we can take this high out, then I'd be thinking, okay, well, this is behaving more or less as I would have hoped, and that we are going to come up and get that at least. But that remains to be seen. However, just as we sit here and now, these two zones remain crucial, as they do across all the stocks. It's the battleground. We need to clear one way or the other before we get the clearer picture. So just coming in here to look at URNM. The Ichimoku isn't quite as reliable here, I think, because we don't have as much history. But we never, even though we've got sort of a nice wick, we had a down week, but we had a long wick, so we closed off the lows, which is good. We never quite found the balance, but I'm not leaning too hard into this just yet. But once again, and this is the same thing across them all, this makes me somewhat nervous. It would make me think that if we did get one more high and this was diverging, that you've got a big decision to make about how much longer you want to hold any potential positions you have. So we've got this rolling. The thing is, these are rolling over together. Now, if you look back here, we had these rolling over together as well. And then I think we had the same, not so much there, but I just think the fact that these are rolling over together, we sort of had it here a little bit, but just as these come down, this true strength indicator starting to just turn over, it just, to me, suggests that if we get one more high and these are still pointing down, that I would be having a very serious consideration about how much longer I was going to hold this, because it almost, to me, would feel like the lemon's been squeezed. But I mean, that's up to you. That's just my opinion, not advice. But that's what this would suggest to me, especially if we start getting divergence here. So daily Ichimoku wise, we're just sitting at balance. We just found the daily balance. I think when I see it sitting between the Tenkans and the fast line and the Kijins and the slow one, that to me just suggests that the market's balanced. It's just found its feet. It's ready to gather itself for the next move. So this is good. But once again, this pivot, I mean, you can see all the connotations here. This pivot remains crucial. Now, we're seeing the same phenomena here in the Sprott uranium miners in terms of low volume and the market pushing back up. So a lack of sellers, but be warned, we just hit the 50 there. So that, I need to see this zone cleared to have further confidence that we can propel a bit further forward. This is something to pay attention to. We definitely need to clear this little area in here. But this doji candle here, this is the kind of candle you'd want to see at the bottom of a move, where we just get a little bit of indecisiveness. And when we look at that session profile again, we can just see that there's, even though the volume's a bit lighter, you can see that there's just more volume being done towards the top sides of the ranges. And even here, the fact that the buying was in here and we just had rejection down here with less volume. You can see here as we've come down, obviously, that the point of controls of the sessions have been lower. So, this being Friday, I'm taking this with a grain of salt. This is okay. This is more volume done in the top half of the range and not much down here. So it's the same thing. I mean, when I'm sort of looking at the volumes overall, it's just saying to me that there's just less selling pressure coming in, okay? Probably, maybe not so much people trying to go short, but maybe less people trying to bail out, so that, that the riffraff's being cleared out, so to speak. Like more the short-term guys might have sort of done their dash and they've dumped the stock, and maybe they're sitting back waiting. Maybe they want to re-enter. Who knows? But this just looks a little bit more bullish to me, in the short term at least. So the one good thing that this doji candle did on Wednesday was it came in and it closed this gap, which we'd sort of highlighted before. So now that that's been closed and we've rejected off it, that's great. That is kind of what you'd want to see. But to me, we still need to reclaim through this area. So that is derived, of course, when we go back from this big top here, and we did come into this top. But it's the same sort of thing. I think that if we saw one more push and we sort of took this high out but remained in this, I just think that this would really be telling you to be on your game, because there's a good chance that this might be done in terms of this movement. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. So just to finish off here, to look at the cycles. Once again, I think this is going to prove to be the daily cycle low. We just need to clear above this, the 10-day moving average, just to consolidate this as the cycle low, and then I can move this box on. But same thing again, we're into the third cycle, and this pivot now remains. This could be a big telltale sign, because I think if we get above here, but fail to take this high out and then start doing that, then we're in intermediate decline, which would suggest to me that the movement is very likely over. So it remains to be seen if that's what happens. But the same thing, we just need, this is the battle zone, we need resolution through this area to if we take this top out, I would think, well, we're probably going to go up, get cycle 4, but then we're probably going to fail in some sort of intermediate downturn. So that it's just the same. I know I've reiterated through all the stocks, but they're all shaping the same way. That the 4th of October pivot is just crucial. Pretty much for any uranium stock you're looking at, this pivot is just crucial in my opinion. I think if we lose that, boy, I think if we lose this pivot in any of those stocks, that they're in trouble. That's just how I'd read it. So one thing I'm just to finish off here, the one thing I'm just still looking at this S&P. I'm still wondering if this is going to turn into an impulse, 1, 2, and then a 1, 2, 3. We've got it looks like an expanded flat, possibly coming in here for a 4. But unless we can clear this area, I remain very, very suspect about the overall market. I just think that there's still great potential for it to head down, and that is obviously going to have a huge effect on not just uranium but everything. So I think there are still some telltale signs out there that this market still wants to come down further. So that's why I would say that when I go back and look at all those stocks, if they manage to take out those highs, I would be giving some serious consideration as to what plans you've got going forward to maybe turn your paper profits into real profits. You can always re-enter, but I just think there's enough warning shots out there that if we do get a new high, you've got to really start to think about how you getting out, or just laying a plan. I keep saying that, always lay a plan of how you're going to deal with it, because if this gets taken out, these bottoms that's held sort of in the low 4200s in the S&P, if that gets taken out, that's not good. And this is the Russell. It's keeping me on my toes. I'll reiterate again. I think we've got one movement, a flat, and then we've got more downside. So, we've just come back up and retested the bottom of this. But you'd really want this market. I can't see how this is a launching pad to go higher. Maybe it could be, but this to me just looks pattern-wise like one move down, sideways consolidation, then we've got another one. That's just what it looks like to me. Time will tell, of course, but it's keeping me pretty wary. So once again, if we see new highs in those stocks, I'd be thinking very long and hard about what you want to do next. So thanks for watching. That was a longer video. I just tried to get through some. I might actually try to do another video maybe tomorrow on a general macro outlook, because I think things like TLT and the rates are not conducive to stock rallies, sustained stock rallies. So that'll be more a macro look, but we will move on to that in a later video. So thank you very much for watching. Once again, like and subscribe, that would help, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.